We've been talking a lot about the NFL and the taking of a knee, and it's pretty well dominated the conversation since the weekend. And joining us right now is Lindsey Harrison, who runs the marketing agency here with a focus on brand strategy, because we wanted to talk about the NFL sponsors who are probably a little bit nervous about this whole thing, I'm guessing, Lindsey. Is that right?
You know, I think that they are waiting a few more days, maybe a few more weeks to really see what is going to happen with all of this. It's kind of a volatile situation as of right now, and it's still polarizing with almost 50-50 on either side. That, I think that we're just kind of analyzing things as of right now of what are the next steps.
And you're in deep trouble if you lose 50% of your customer base. They've got to be thinking about that.
You're right, and you're seeing different brands that are coming out, and they are either not saying anything or they are saying things. But when they are saying things, they're saying, we support the right to protest, but we also reaffirm our support for the flag and for our country. Which, if I'm on payroll for Anheuser-Busch, I think that I'd be saying the exact same thing.
We just had a caller call in within the last half hour and say he's not going to be shopping at one of the local food marts anymore because of this, unless they pull their sponsorship, their ad dollars from the NFL and from our local team here. With your experience in running the marketing agency, how would you handle that situation if somebody came up to you and said, I'm not going to buy from you anymore until you pull?
Yeah, and again, I think that is what everyone is talking about as of right now. You have the right to be able to do those things. And that's what our great country is about. And the fact that you are able to protest and you are able to spend your dollars where it is that you want to spend your dollars. And if that particular brand isn't aligned with your views, you're able to do that. But also as a brand, we are able to go for or against specific topics as well. And if we don't know which way we want to go as of right now, you have that right as a consumer to stop buying our product or to continue buying our product. And again, you're not going to please everybody specifically within this topic. And I think that you're going to polarize less people by sitting on the sidelines on this than you are coming out and taking a side.
Lindsey, what advice would you give the NFL if you were advising them?
Oh gosh, I think the NFL needs all kinds of advice if you ask me. I think that they need to really figure out what their stances are as a whole when it comes to these types of things. I mean, we just had it in Dallas. That's where I'm from. And the fact of with our police shooting, we wanted to put a tag on our helmets, and we weren't able to do that. And I think that the NFL needs to figure out which battles they want to fight, and it needs to be consistent across the board, and which battles they aren't going to fight, and that needs to be consistent across the board as well.
I'm thinking somebody like Publix has such an enormous brand presence that they really don't need the NFL. If I were running Publix right now, I'd say, hey, let's pull out. That'll make quite a statement, because they need that advertising about as much as, I don't know, that Hugh Hefner did back in the day. But
well, I think that you also have to look at it like this. I mean, it is a business, and ratings for at least this last week have been up because people are wanting to see if players are going to be taking a knee. I mean, people are tuning into the channels to see what it is that's happening within the NFL, and as a brand, whether that's right or wrong, you're getting more coverage because of it. Now, what I can see is that you're going to see brands starting to take away from individual sponsorship players or player sponsorships. You saw that last year when it came to Brandon Marshall. So I think that you're going to start seeing that more than them coming out of the NFL.
Well, anyway, Lindsey, we appreciate your joining us on AM Tampa Bay. What's your website?
It's crowdmarketing.com, and we're out of Dallas, Texas.
It's crowdmarketing.com?
That's it.
itscrowdmarketing.com out of Dallas. You a big Cowboys fan?
We're a big Cowboys fan down here. We like our Dak.
Dak Prescott.
All right. Thanks for joining us, Lindsey.
Thanks, guys.
There's nothing more spineless than corporate America, but so far corporate America really hasn't taken a stance one way or the other. And by corporate America, I mean the people, the big dollar spenders on these NFL advertisements that we see on a weekly basis during the fall. Someone that might have insight and expertise on that is our brand expert, Lindsey Harrison, who's standing by hopefully with some answers. Lindsey Harrison, how are you?
I'm great. Great to talk again.
Well, great to have you back with us. I'm just wondering, and this poll, as I said, is out overnight by CNN. I'm not a big believer in polls. I think we only have to go through one or two election cycles to see how reliable they are. But it does say that 24% of the people that consume NFL games plan to protest by not watching and also protesting the products that are advertised on NFL games. Do you buy into that at all? Do you think that number is high, and do you think that's even possible?
I don't buy into it. I agree with you when saying something in a poll and actually doing something are two completely different things. And if it's my opinion, I'm thinking that in the next few weeks that this is something that starts to fizzle out. I mean, you had a football game on Thursday night where nobody kneeled, everybody took each other's arms, and nobody's talking about it. So I don't see really any big things that are going to continue to happen in the next few weeks. And in my opinion, as brands are not saying anything one way or another, I don't see this really going too much further.
Well, we know who the brands are, right? It's the big beer companies, it's the car manufacturers, and I think the way it works on Madison Avenue is they lick their finger, they stick it out the window and see which way the wind is blowing, and the prevailing winds this week may not be the ones in 2 or 3 weeks. As you were saying. So I sense they try to ride it out rather than take a stand, because I think if the country is this divided on it, and it appears to be again by these latest polls that are out, this is a 50-50 deal. They're not going to try and alienate 50% of their potential buying market, correct?
Right. And, if I'm on the payroll for any of these big brands, I'm doing exactly what it is that they're doing right now. So some of them are coming out. If they are saying anything at all, it's we're supporting the right to protest, yet we're also reaffirming our support for the flag. You have the Dallas Cowboys that came in and they took a kneel and then they stood up during the national anthem. And people it is such a polarizing issue right now of the 50-50, where those polls, if you like, are going with this issue, that it's just detrimental to a brand to come out and say one way or another.
Well, let's say later on, after you and I are done here in the next 15 or 20 minutes, that the phone rings and it's Roger Goodell. And Roger Goodell says, Lindsey, I think I've got a problem here, and I think it may be affecting my brand. I think we can ride this out, but maybe we can't. What would you advise Roger Goodell to do with his brand right now, the National Football League?
I think that they actually need to do some soul searching. And I think that they need to figure out kind of across the board what it is that they're going to do with these types of issues. So I'm down here in Dallas, and we had just even a few months ago where we wanted to put things on our helmets to support our fallen police department because of the brutality that happened down here. And we weren't allowed to do that. And so I feel like the NFL, probably much like brands, but at the same point, they are taking some pretty interesting stances one way or another. But I don't know if it really all lines up. And I think that they need to really look inwards and see what do we stand for and what are we going to, as not only in the NFL, but as a business, decide that we're going to do when it comes to issues like this in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think Goodell has demonstrated over the course of his tenure that he deals with individual things more decisively than what he deals with overall things and other things that affect more than just a player or two. This whole concussion thing, I think, was a giant mess, and he did not handle it properly. This is another example of that. You mentioned the Dallas police officers that were slaughtered there last summer. in a shootout, and they wanted to honor them. There was another player that wanted to put purple on the bottom of his shoes because of some sort of medical cause or something like that. And I think he comes off as kind of oafish when he deals with the individual, and kind of clueless when he deals with the overall issues that affect more than just one or two players in his league. I think what you're probably saying is, Roger, let's have a little consistency here, because we've got players taking a knee, we got players taking two knees, players interlocking arms, owners kneeling with players, another guy at the end of the line during the national anthem stretching. I mean, what's next? Jugglers at the end of it, slam poetry readings. I mean, everybody seems to be doing their own thing. And here's the guy that's just like presiding over all of this chaos. I think consistency is what you would preach to him, wouldn't it?
And that's exactly what I would do is, let's figure out moving forward, what are we going to be doing within these types of situations? And granted, yes, every one of them is very different, but let's kind of have an overarching theme to where we're going to go with this. Because as of right now, nobody knows what happens on a week-to-week basis, and controversy after controversy of things that happen within the NFL. And, there is no consistency with it. And that would be what it is that I would tell him for sure.
Do you think the flames on this were artificially fanned by the president? In other words, he went there for no apparent reason a couple of Friday nights ago, and I don't know whether it was because of a firm belief in this or because if it was distracting from other things that were going on in his administration that weren't getting done. I thought it was an odd thing to do at the time he chose to do it. Do you think they were artificially inflamed?
I'm going to leave that one to probably some people that are a little bit smarter when it comes to the president's agenda, to be completely honest with you. I don't know. What I can say now is that I don't know if people are protesting because of the actual cause that started, or if they are protesting against their right to be able to have free speech because of what the president said.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that answer is. I would have to say that it's probably against the president because of the fact that, if they were really about this cause, they would have been doing things last year, and that didn't happen until something was brought out by Donald Trump.
You don't think, though, I guess to put a cap on all of this, because I want to get off the phone, and just in case Roger Goodell calls you, you don't think, because your opinion, though, is the NFL at this point doesn't have a real brand problem, but they need to get something in place so that if something like this pops up down the road, maybe as big as this or maybe even bigger than this, there's some sort of way to deal with it. I think that's what I'm hearing you say here.
Right. The NFL isn't going anywhere. These brands, these major sponsors are not going anywhere. This, in my opinion, is not going to affect bottom lines very much, if at all. But I do think that moving forward, the NFL is going to have to figure out something, or else they've had so many slaps on the wrist when it comes to these different types of issues, and they've dodged the bullet of not being able to jump back from them, that there's going to be something in the near future that will put them to rest if they don't figure it out. Now, I can see that, you're probably not going to have sponsors that are pulling away from the actual NFL as a whole, but I can see that if this does continue to go, that you're going to have sponsors that are pulling away from actual individuals.
Sure.
And taking that sponsorship money from them.
Sure, like endorsements that athletes do and players do. No, sure, absolutely. Lindsey Harrison, brand expert. If somebody's looking for you, how do they find you?
Yeah, I'm in Dallas, Texas, and our website is itscrowdmarketing.com.
I thought it was Dallas by God, Texas. It's just Dallas, Texas now?
I like Dallas by God, Texas. I'm using that from now on.
Thank you, Lindsey.
Have a great day. Talk soon.
We have marketing expert Lindsey Harrison to talk about the financial impact, if any, to the league, to the advertisers, and also interested, Lindsey, to get your thoughts as to what you might be telling a company that has an attachment to a particular NFL team or a player that might be involved in these types of protests. How do you handle these types of situations?
This one's really interesting. This one is probably one of the most polarizing issues I've seen in a long time. So advertisers are seeing that as well, and they are taking a step backwards. They are looking at this, they're assessing it, they're trying to figure out if in the next few weeks, starting tonight, if this is going to continue to be something that they need to look at, or if this is going to fizzle out. And so if I'm on the payroll for some of these companies, my thoughts on that are let's see what happens in the next few weeks and see if we need to really step into this or not.
I know that a few companies kind of made comments. There's only one that I can recall, unless I missed something over the past couple of days, that really actually seemed to endorse the idea. Nike actually took the step of kind of endorsing what the players were doing, didn't they?
They said that they are supporting the right to protest, and they did not say anything about reaffirming their support for the flag or those different types of things, much like Under Armour did. So I am hearing that a lot of people are thinking that they're saying that they are siding with the players. However, I think that maybe they just didn't put that second sentence in there. But yeah, I mean, as a whole, you're really kind of seeing companies say, look, we're not going to say anything, or we're going to say that we're okay with both sides of this.
Well, but of course, in marketing, perception is reality, right? And so if Nike said something that was a statement, even if it was maybe not a complete thought, what people take out of it is ultimately the only thing that matters, right? And I mean, the reputational risk here is to the NFL, to the players, but also we've seen some advertisers in times previous that have ended up after the fact, realizing that they made a mistake when they weighed in too soon, haven't we?
Oh, we definitely have. And, I don't see this as a whole really affecting so much of the NFL or the sponsors when it comes to dollars. Unless there's a huge boycott, unless there is some more major things that happen in the next few weeks, I truly think that this is going to be something that fizzles out. But one thing that I think that you might see are sponsors taking their sponsorship money away from individual players. So I think that you're going to see more on a micro level that they're revoking money for those players, but on the macro level, I'm not going to go as far as saying that this is going to hurt people's bottom line.
So, I'm interested when I hear you think this one will fizzle out. I actually tend to disagree with that only because of the nature of the particular protest itself. When you're talking about a particular cause, I think that's one thing. And we saw, for example, Colin Kaepernick begin this before the season last year. Conveniently enough, when he was benched and apparently had time in his hands to begin to protest on the field. But what ended up becoming something that was relatively isolated, obviously the president poured some kerosene onto this thing on Friday, and you ended up having two other things come into play. One, it became widespread, and where you had more than 10% of players engaged in this. And secondly, the way that it's being done during the presentation of colors. I'm going to make a statement. It might sound odd without the context. I'm going to get into it later in the show. But literally, according to the code, United States Code, what they're doing is anti-American, because you are not under United States Code, the presentation of colors and the national anthem, you are not to do anything other than to stand and pay homage to the flag. And so there are a lot of people that demographically are military families that know this. And some of the response I've gotten from listeners and the people that have started to cancel already DirecTV, I think this thing could have legs. Do you see it differently?
I do see it differently. And the reason why I see it is, we had fuel to the fire for sure. But I now am seeing that, and I think as when it comes to players that are locking arms, that are kneeling together, that are standing together, it's more of a unity side of things as opposed to hey, we have the right to do this, as opposed to we are disrespecting our flag. And again, whether that's a right or a wrong thing, I'm going to leave that to others to argue. I don't see that. I mean, we're going to look at it week after week after week and go, okay, well, they're kneeling again. I mean, how many times am I going to be excited or mad about that? I don't know.
Interesting. When people go for entertainment, I think it has legs that way. I'm telling you, I've heard from a bunch of people, longtime fans, that have canceled their Sunday ticket, that have said they're out. And the thing that I think is different this time, in terms of the conviction of it, last year I was saying for the people who were doing it, it's convenient. You know, if you have an 0-3 team and you are just looking for a reason not to subject yourself to a miserable season for your team, well, this is a convenient out for you. And we did see the ratings decline an average of 8% last year. And as much as they tried to explain it by the election, truth of the matter is it continued after the election. 10 of the 12 games, including the Super Bowl and the playoffs, had ratings declines. And so, that's a very real thing at a certain level. But in this particular case, with DirecTV now accepting people that can cancel, well, if you actually go ahead and cancel, now you literally aren't going to be necessarily in a position to watch many of those games that you might have otherwise. And if nothing else, couldn't DirecTV end up losing some revenue in this deal?
Well, I have heard that about DirecTV, and I'm using that as almost look, this is an individual basis, and you're coming to us saying that you don't want this because of X, Y, Z, and we would like to retain you as a customer, and this is what we're going to do to be able to do that. So theirs is a little bit of a different case, but again, dollars talk, and all I'm seeing is that they're trying to continue to retain customers however they can.
Very interesting. I will be curious to see how this all plays out, because last year I tended to agree with your assessment. The feedback that I'm getting this year is unlike anything I've seen before, and especially in talk radio, we've been the subject of boycotts and having our advertisers targeted and everything else, so pretty well versed in all of this, and this one feels different. So we'll see. Thank you for taking the time with us.
Well, I'd love to continue the conversation for sure as the weeks continue to go, if you're open to that. So you guys
100%. Yeah, absolutely. I would love to. Absolutely love to. Thank you very much. Lindsey Harrison. She runs a marketing agent. Yeah, you too.